Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. I am here live with Johnny from Johnny's at the beach, and we are here hearing his amazing story. This business here has been open since 1948. This is a long legacy business, and I am so honored to be here with Johnny. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And as for people that don't know who you are or what this place is about, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and give us a history.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm Johnny Kinder, and I grew up here. Uh, I wasn't here in 1948. I showed up in 1953, came into consciousness about 1959. So a lot of my recollections started about 1959. Well, it was about five and a half. But anyway, so I grew up here in this business, and mom and dad came out here from Arizona, and they pitched a tent. And they bought this, they put a down payment of $200 back in February of 1948. And the earliest recorded transaction I have for this place was in April 7th of 1948. And by the end of the year, they had the family home built, they had the docks at that time in, they had the launch ramp in, and they had the bathrooms and showers in. So they did a lot in 8 months. When I took over in 21, this property had seen a lot of iterations from the early days when this place was a fish camp that people launched, they parked their boats here. This was all about fishing. We had a cleaning station, and it's still the cleaning station to this day. It was a whole different thing growing up here in the 50s and 60s, and all of us kids worked. I had two sisters. We were all 2 years apart, and all of us worked in this environment. And my mom and my littlest sister, Judy, they ran the office. They took the money in. I worked the launch rig. My other sister ran the gas pumps, and I was responsible for cleaning the boats and making sure the gas was filled in the tanks. I mean, it was just crazy. And it was very, very, very busy. And it would start at 6 o'clock in the morning. And on any given weekend, we would launch roughly 100 boats in that day.
Wow.
And it was all day. And then they'd come back. And if it was a double tide, then the people would show up in the late afternoon. They'd want to go fishing. And then, you did that. And between times, you're trying to get the boats up on the ramp and clean them and put them down and, make sure there's gas in the tank. Only one time I forgot to put gas in one of the tanks. The guy had to get towed in. He was very upset with me. And so was my father. And he wasn't a very gentle guy, by the way, nor patient. Anyway, he was a whole trip. I mean, he either liked you or he didn't like you. I mean, and he didn't care. But so they built this, and it was just this total family run operation. And whatever was going on in the family was happening out here.
Yeah.
So if we were in trouble in public, And even answering the phone. I mean, the details, there were so many details. It was a business phone before it was a residential phone. So it was business and residential. One. And so when you answered that phone in the early days, I can remember Johnny's boat landing and trailer court. And then it changed. It evolved. It became Johnny's Marina and RV Park. And when I took it over, I changed the name to Johnny's at the Beach. And that has its own story. And I had finished up a big project in Montana. And over the decade that I worked on it, I'd gotten to know a lot of the ranchers. And I remember this one old rancher, and he goes, "Well, Johnny, where are you going after this?" And this is exactly what I said. I said, "If you want to know where Johnny's at the beach." And I thought to myself, that'd be a good name for the marina and the park. And it describes where we're at. We're not on the beach, we're at the beach. So by the time I took this over through all the iterations, my folks grew old here. And it was my mom and dad's desire. They didn't want to be in a home. They wanted to stay here for all their days. And thank God for my sister and her husband. They were able to do that. And so dad took off first in 07, and then mom took off in 18. And I bought the place in 21, though my sister wished I had bought it earlier. But I was committed to this project in Montana, and I just couldn't do it. I said, okay, in 2020, I looked at it and I said, we need some financials. There were no financials. And I said, I need a set of financials on this. I want 2020. And so we got the bookkeeper to post information into QuickBooks. And it wasn't daily, it was once a month. So it was like at the end of the month, whatever happened in that month, it was all dumped into one spot. And I knew we were in trouble. Oh my gosh. But the whole place had just, mom and dad got old. They went into their late 80s and mid 90s. And, I'm not there yet. And they just didn't want to see change. And it was, it was hard. And so my sister did, and her husband did what they could do. But the best thing they did is they took care of mom and dad. And they honored that wish that they could stay here for the remainder of their days. And both of them stayed here until the very end. So thank you, Judy and Gary. I appreciate that. So I took over, and I remember it was like October. I was standing out there in front of the park, and I was looking at it, and I thought, what have I done? I remember I was asking myself, what have I just done? Because I committed myself to it. And it was just this daunting experience. So let me just give you an idea. We were 98% filled with full timers. We'd been off the market as far as people passing through for 2.5 decades. And this place had just gone downhill. The mobile homes were like 50, 60 years old. And I'm like looking at this mess, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm glad I took all the pictures that I did of the before. And I mean, just the amount of garbage we took off this place was like 10 tons of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, 10 tons. And I wound up getting control of half a dozen mobile homes. I knocked them all down. And this was such a transitional thing. I really put the effort into the waterfront and cleaning everything out. And we had RVs that were just, it looked dangerous just to enter their spot. It was just filled with things. I allowed myself 36 months to get it done. We did it in 19, which I was very surprised during COVID. And I tried to be very respectful to everybody. For 6 months, I just chatted everybody up. I told them what was coming and what the vision was, and, what it's going to take. And some people listened and a lot didn't. So, most everything I was able to handle amicably, but there were a few that I couldn't. And so anyway, but all this time we were working on the waterfront. I wanted to anchor this place and put the energy into the waterfront, because what I thought was the draw, as well as the beach, on the west side of the park. And so I remember looking at the docks, and they didn't look like this at the time. We're still working on it, but I kept looking at this, and I'm going, well, it's not much of a profit center. And so I thought, well, it's an amenity. So I started figuring out how to maximize the amenity. And one of the things that we did was we encouraged fishing people with their little kids, take them down, let them fish for a little perch, like I did. And I told the perch story, okay, about me selling a little perch over to the aquarium over here, Shipwreck. It's not there anymore. And that's on our Facebook page, that story. And so those little kids can do this thing that I did when I was a little guy. And so I kind of just started rethinking about who we were. And my wife would always say, well, it'll come to you. And I always thought I had to think it, but no, it was what people shared with me. And then I said, I need to let people tell me how they see this. And I know I'm not for everybody, okay? Because people come through and, they see concrete and pavement and all that. And, and I go, hey, I get it. You can't see it. And I'm okay with that, And over time, I'll give them some of the things that they want. So we're working on our little redwood forest, by the way, okay? And we're trying to do these dwarf redwoods. We really don't know what we're doing, but we're hoping that we'll get some people in here that can help us figure this out. And we've been putting in a lot of flowers and flower boxes and that sort of thing. But I think the best thing that we can do is bring the personal touch. I prefer to answer the phone. I prefer to meet people and just talk about what we have now, what the vision is, and share with them what this beautiful country, what they offer. People just don't know. And so my niece, who was in here in the very beginning, and her husband, they helped me kind of just lift this thing up. And I hired a consulting firm out of Colorado, and they did everything. And I remember they were kind of like high flying it. And one day I was sitting in this parking lot in Montana. And I told the lady from the consulting firm, I said, no, you need to understand. I need you to tell me what kind of equipment to buy. I have no idea because this whole place was nothing but paper, checks, and cash only. Nobody ever took a credit card. Okay. Now, in the old days, we took Chevron credit cards, okay, for gas. I remember that with a, or charge it. So we were just, everything was here was just paper. And I mean, there were boxes of paper. And it was all like I was concerned about what it was and receipts and everything. When it was said and done, I took 1,000 pounds of paper out of here and had it shredded. It was just stacked to the ceiling. And it just, and you're trying to figure out what to do. And I mean, so many things are going on. We had the place painted. We had the upstairs renovated. We were putting in windows. And first I was just going to put windows in upstairs. And I thought, no, I can't just do windows upstairs. I got to do windows downstairs, budgets, right? So my niece's husband, he was the project manager and he's high powered. He was project manager for the insurance company, insurance division in Washington. So he really had. In fact, I still work with what he developed back 4 years ago. We're still walking the plan out. But he was going, Johnny, you're getting outside your budget. So I sent him this picture of this GIF, and it was this watermelon. And I sent it to him, and this bullet hits this watermelon, and it goes, just blows up, right? And I go, that's the budget. Because, you go in with one expectation and I mean, we weren't just doing remodel. We were learning new processes. We had this consulting firm that was bringing us up to speed with credit cards, with our booking system. There was no booking system up until that time, with, how the reservations are handled, how the accounting is handled. I mean, it's just on. And I was thankful for Annie, and she has a master's in education administration, and boy, she did a great job for that. And when she left me with a binder of processes. So you can flip through that binder and go, if you want to find something, it's there. She documented every step of the way. And she was here like 3.5 months. And so, and plus whatever I was doing up in the park, right? That was going on. And it was just a firefight, it really was. But then I fed it for 19 months. And in the 19th month, this place became a toddler and started walking on its own 2 feet. And it's been doing that ever since. And I understand who we are a bit, though we're still evolving. I understand how the processes work, because most of the processes were farmed out to this consulting firm. And I didn't want to mess with that. And it took 3 years. And at the 3rd year, we took it back. We took the whole thing over, because it went a year longer than I thought. But yeah, it was 3 years, and we felt like we could walk on our own now. And so that's what we did. And we're here to this day, and we're still evolving. We're still trying to make it better.
Awesome. Let me ask you some questions about this, because I like how you say that the business has developed a new identity over time. It sounded like you were kind of wrestling with the traditional identity of the space of the business and trying to bring that forward to today, but also realizing that it's going to be different. Like, it's not going to be the same, but it has a lot of that flavor. Talk to me about the evolution of the business and what it meant to you. How did you come up with this new identity of the business? I know you have processes, you paid for consulting for it, you have processes, but process is not identity. You gave it a new identity, and talk to me about how that intentionality there of moving the business with a new identity, but still maintaining its integrity from its origins.
Yeah, that is a great question. It was fluid. It was dynamic. It was on the fly. Ideas came like the Johnnies at the beach. I just spoke it and it was there. And that's kind of what we did here. And as I cast the vision, and I was always casting the vision, and I look at casting the vision like putting a vibe out, okay? And if you ever have 2 strings that are on the same wavelengths, there's a sympathetic vibe, and the one will be vibing and the other one will pick it up. And so as I was casting this vision, people were giving me input, But I was also getting a lot of input from my niece and her husband, and then also people working around, like even the painting, the color of the old lift. Okay, we were going to go with this yellow, and somebody said, I think it's too much yellow, Johnny. I'd go with Caterpillar yellow. And I said, okay, and that's how we did it. We were very inviting to people, like, bring your ideas. We cast our vision so they knew what we were trying to do, but we didn't know what we were going to have. We had no idea. I knew we needed to anchor the place with a really nice waterfront experience, but the color must have taken us a month to figure that out. And there was goofy things there. And I remember my niece not liking one color. But then the guy who put the mural on, he was pushing for what I thought was a different color. But when I looked at his color, and even though it was a different name than the color that my niece liked, the color, this other color, and I looked at it, they had different names, but they had the same color components. I said, Annie, these two are the same. So it's just like that. We just didn't know. And there were things that we thought we were going to do that we didn't do, or we shelved them. Like, okay, let's do this later. And once we got past the first 19 months, then the declaration was, whatever we're going to do, it's got to fund itself. So it has to walk on its own. I'm done paying for it in that regard.
Yeah.
Because it was expensive for me anyhow. And so that's how it evolved. It was fluid. It was a lot of voices. Fortunately, Annie is just this very creative force. She designed our logo, designed our webpage, and a lot of people just say, that's a really great webpage. And it's very simple. It's very homespun. And as I began to talk to people, it occurred to me like that we got a lot of history. And as I shared the history, then I started making the big photos that you see in the office. We were looking at a blank page, and it's just like, okay, oh, this would be good. And this would be good. And in those early 19 months, if somebody thought we should do this, we did it. I didn't chintzy on, I spent the money. And I always believe that to really go far, you have to have people that are smarter than you, have vision, and that they're with you. They're dedicated to what you're doing. But you always have to cast that vision. And that's what I felt like I was doing. I was always casting the vision. And as it changed, so did the vision. But overall, it was always looking to be an influence in the community. The people who worked here, and they would walk away with something. They just didn't work here. No, I gave them my time. Like, hey, this is how we're looking at things, and it would be something helpful down the road. And then each guest who stays here, I want them to feel valued, and that's really important that we value people here and take the time. And that's why I take the little kids and I show them, with their parents, like, hey, you can catch some fish off here. And it's just a wild experience, So that's what we're doing.
I love how you balance your leadership style with the casting a vision. You do what you need to do by casting a vision and giving people direction, but you give your supporting cast enough creative space to be able to take ownership and help develop that fine tuning of your vision together with you. And you hold it loosely in your hand, where you're allowing them to voice their own creativity and have their own personal touches on your business and your vision and where you're taking everything. I think that's awesome, and something that a lot of people can take a lot of wisdom from, where you lead with intention but not firm where nobody else has any creativity. And I think that's super, super powerful.
That can be really stressful for people working for you. If they're used to somebody telling you what to do, my style of management doesn't work. I watch what they're doing. As long as they don't fall in the water, we're okay. And I like them to just find their way. I give them a few ideas. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is what I'd like you to do. But then I want them to just find their own way, because I'm still making it up. Now I know certain processes, right? But if somebody can take a process and take it to another level, or go, hey, have you ever thought about this? Well, that's the kind of information I want to know. But you can't, if you tell somebody that it's A to B to C to D, and that's what you are to do every day, they're not going to see anything else. And so, but it can be hard for people that are working for you to not have that guidance. And it's just not me.
I like how you say that too, because I think that's 100% correct, because there's different people need different set of working parameters. Some people, you have to give them their box, and they can't, like, if you try to have them do anything outside their box, they shut down, or they freak out, or they just don't understand. They can't process that.
Right.
Doesn't mean they're bad people, but it just means that they're not leadership potential. They're not in the best spot if they're working under somebody like yourself, who has a more fluid, creative style of leadership, which is calling people to a higher plane of thought.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to be able to have that critical thinking aspect. And there are a lot of people that they never develop that ability, and so that I could see where that would be very challenging for them to work under those type of conditions. Right? Calling somebody to work in an environment that's not their strength. So, and yeah, I agree. I don't think it makes them bad people or less important. There are
No.
plenty of other jobs that are available for that particular type of
And it
person.
just may not be here.
But it just may not be here. And I like how you say that, like, you're not for everybody, but the people that you do work with, I feel like probably would love you and follow you to the ends of the earth.
Well, we tell ourselves that. But my daughter, on the other hand, who does our maintenance, and she's very highly skilled. I mean, very talented. And now she's all about organization, and she's all about direction, and she's all about laying out the process, and all about telling people, okay, this is what we need to be done, and get them all. She's a master at that. Okay. And so she really brings that. And, I know I frustrate her. She was trimming back the trees. So we had this yesterday, we were parking this trailer, and the slide out touched just a little bit of it. And I said, well, we can cut that back. And I looked over at her, and she's just like, now you tell me? And I said, no, I can do this. And I got up there with a little clipper, and I just clipped it away and everything. But she let me know about it. And she goes, you put all this pressure on me. And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'm just saying things. And I said, I clipped it away from there. It worked okay. But she's very intentional in her own right. And she's very good at what she does. And sometimes it's a bit intense. So I'm like saying, okay, Amy, it's like, yeah, we still have to live here.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you familiar with the DISC? Like the personalities, the DISC personality, DISC?
No.
So, quick synopsis. DISC personality is like this wheel that classifies different types of personalities. And this is something that I learned along my journey.
Yeah.
But everybody's got maybe like one or maybe two. So everybody always has like one dominant and then maybe a second sub personality. And it sounds like you're a visionary. You like people to have fun and a good time,
Yeah.
but you're also directional and dominant, whereas you have enough that directional force, right? But your primary maybe tends to be, I would say, probably is just getting to know you, is probably more of an I personality, where you like everybody to have a good time.
I do. It's very important.
And it sounds like Amy is a high C, where she likes everything done compliantly the right way.
Yes.
And her sub personality would probably be a D, where she has that force of nature behind her, where she just likes
she's
it done.
definitely a force of nature.
But that I's and C's tend to be in conflict a lot, because the I likes to have fun, whereas the C likes it done correctly.
My daughter does a really good job out in front. She can do it. But I think she really likes working on projects, and she's done some amazing stuff. I walked in, she was supposedly painting the women's bathroom. She goes, Dad, I'll patch this little thing up here. As she dug into it, she realized that the whole wall was rotted, as well as the header. I walk into this paint job, and she's got the ceiling jacked up. She's got the header out. She's got the walls out, and it's like, this is a paint job. And she goes, no, I got this. I said, okay.
That's the high C.
Very high C.
Very high C.
Very high C.
It has to be very compliant. Everything's got to be done. It's got to get done right.
She's on the first story propping up the second story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Could be a little scary.
I walked in going, whoa. And to me, I would never do that. But she gets in there. She rebuilt that whole section of dock, put all new water lines in.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. And so I really appreciate what she brings to the table.
Yeah. And this was a family business. This is a family business. Still a family business. Talk to us about how that succession was, and how you went about taking it over from your sister, I believe, from your parents. So it went from your parents to your sister. You came in, you bought there was probably some intense conversations you had there with this transition. But talk to us a little bit about that process, and maybe if you can share a few helpful insights for other people that may be dealing with how do you take over? How do you deal with family? How do you negotiate with family members? Like
Yeah,
that's got to
that's
be
a
tough.
good question. Yeah. So did I do it right? No, I could probably done it better. So it was mom and dad's place, and my sister and her husband were there to take care of my mom and dad. And this business comes along with it. And they just didn't want anything to change. I get that. And my sister is very compliant with what my parents wanted. So the transition, yeah, it wasn't the best. And my parents kind of set it up that way. And though I knew what was going to happen, they did share what what the estate was and how it was going to be handled. And my one sister had passed away. So, and then my youngest sister, kind of all the responsibility fell onto her, and she kind of ran the business. And I kept looking at this for a number of years, right? And mom and dad were old, and then dad passed away. Mom just didn't care. It was dad who was the business guy, right? Mm-hmm. Not my mother. I think it was set up on a kind of competitive basis. My parents set it up that basically I was to buy out the other two, and my sister, they took some from me and some from my niece and put her in a very superior position. And, watching this whole thing, I knew, well, we weren't going to go into business together. I thought about it, I entertained it, and just some of the comments that were made about what I wanted to do, I just realized, no, this will never work. It will fail, and we will just be at odds. I will be outgunned because they will hold all the cards. And I just said, not interested. And so it was set up that I basically had to buy them out. So, but going into it, I was very critical. I mean, really critical of what was going on because I could just see the whole place deteriorate. And I mean, just those pilings. I mean, it was like, to get those kind of beefed back up. I mean, phenomenal amount of money. She knew about it, but wasn't willing to do anything about it. Didn't want to spend the money because there was no money to spend, really. Okay. And so everything just kept going downhill, and I just was very frustrated by it. And as I got closer and I started seeing what the truth was of the financials, and I remember asking Judy, I said, Judy, how do you know how we did? And she said, well, if I have more at the end of the year than I had at the beginning of the year in the checking account, I did good. Well, this place was losing money, and the only way it made any money was because of all the deferred maintenance. There was no maintenance going on. None. So that was frustrating. Mm. And when I got my first eye-popping 1 year, I went, this is bad. It was 98% full-timers. The rent was 50% below market value, but nobody would want to live here. But I bought it right. I wound up with having an interest in it, gave me a leg up on anybody who was an outside buyer. And I know returns, understand real estate. It's my deal. My whole thing was land acquisition for energy, originally oil and gas, and then wind, solar, and then worked as a consultant in the real estate department, or setting up the real estate department for Chevron Real Estate Management Company. And my wife and I worked together for years. So we learned a lot. I got to work in Australia in transferring a foreign company, Chevron, into Chevron Ltd, and working in that realm. And so I learned a lot. I got to work with really high-powered people. And so we benefited from it. So I'm looking at this going, I know what I'm talking about, but I felt there was no respect for what I knew. Zero. And so, I guess maybe if you feel a little disrespected in a way, but my attitude wasn't great either because I was frustrated by what I saw and what I knew it could be. And I knew decisions just weren't in the best interest of these properties. But what's more important, this business or my parents? And, in retrospect, after getting the deal done, I came to terms with it. Could I have handled it better? Yeah. I was just frustrated, and I just felt like it was still paper, cash, or checks, no credit cards. It was just done the way it had been done for 70 years. And so I remember getting all the information. My sister sent me all the information. I hired this consulting firm. They were actually an RV park management company. And I remember we front end loaded, and this was the year before. We front end loaded everything in, all the information. And then, so we had an idea, right? We could run, and they could manage it because they showed us how to do the bookings, but they could have access. We knew as we learned the process, we had the information there. Well, heck, one time this whole box of information disappeared, and it's like, oh well. It's like we didn't even need it because we had it. And so I remember my sister saying, well, Johnny, you're going to need to train behind the desk in the paperwork. I said, Judy, there is no paperwork. And so when we showed up on January 1st, my niece was here December 31st. We showed up with a computer and all of these envelopes of money that had been paid for January in December. So that was all put in little envelopes. I had coins on the floor. Stuff was falling out of the envelopes. And I never got rid of an envelope, which was a good thing because every now and then I'd find like a check or money that was plastered to the inside of it that we missed. And it was a burden. There was no energy. There was just dutiful submission to bringing mom home and getting this place into my hands. And so I didn't even have the bandwidth to do anything. So we were using the Wi-Fi hotspot to do everything. And then we got internet in. That took a couple weeks. And I finally set the printer up, and there was just a box of stuff, of equipment that I'd ordered, right? That I said, hey, what do I need? And they gave me a list, and I ordered everything on that list. And so it was a printer and a computer, a laptop. And in fact, that little booklet that I gave you, you'll see we're holding an envelope and a computer, and that envelope was this money. And so, yeah, it was crazy. It was not organized. I think with family businesses, unless the mom and the dad or whoever is the business person cares about, I think they care about the family and wanting them to have it, but they may not know how to go about it. I think with my dad, I think in a way, and I had to go away because there was no room for two alpha dogs in this place. And I was definitely an alpha dog, but I had a lot of my mom. So there's a gentler side of me. And, but no, not on his turf, which was fine. I went out, I learned all this information and learned all these principles and had all these experiences from the ivory towers of the big city to the down in the dirt negotiating and all that other stuff. And I felt like I just brought that home into here. And so my daughter's got a lot of skill sets and she's bringing that in. Like I said, I'm just not sure this is for her, or she has to come to a realization that it is for her and what is important to her. Right now, she's still weighing it out. I'm not holding her back. If it's not for her, then I'll figure something else out. But I still always have the family in mind. But family don't want it, then I'll come up with something else.
Yeah.
Because I ain't going to be here. But I'd like to leave some order to it.
Looking back at the transitional phase, what advice would you give to somebody else in that similar position of having to negotiate or deal with family or transition a business from one family member to the next, either generational or laterally the same generation? Like, what would be your advice to others that would have to go through something like this?
Everyone's different. Every family dynamic is different. And, I come out parents from the greatest generation, and I'm a boomer. And it was my father's vision. My mom, she went along with it. She supported him every step of the way, but it was his vision. It was his deal all the way. And when he passed, it just like went away. The vision, the whole thing, where we're going. But he did tell my sister one thing. He said, well, the gold mine is empty. That's what I said. Well, gee, we just got to go find a new one. But so his deal was he was just going to keep it. He just wanted to stay in the family. He was happy to have my sister run it for them, take care of it. Got to a point where he just didn't even see what was happening. Because I know when he was a younger man, he was pretty gung-ho. And so it's hard to say because I work with a lot of ranchers and farmers in my business acquiring land for oil and gas exploration and alternative energy development. And a lot of them are my age that own the land. Okay. And their kids are gone. And it's these little family farms, and that's changing. And usually what I find is one's interested, one's not. or several, or nobody's interested. And then what they do, they'll divide it up. Well, as it keeps fractionalizing out, economics just aren't there. So these other gets down to a point where you just keep it as a hobby farm, or you lease it out and it brings in a little bit of money either by sharecropping or just flat rate. But a lot of the boomers that I've spoken with, they don't have the families to even give the farm to, but they'd like to keep it. And sometimes alternative energy is an answer for them, because instead of it necessarily being farmed for crops, it's being farmed for energy. Okay, it's another type of farming, and it makes sense for some of them. But I've seen some of the families are all working together. Father just trusts sons to do things, and he lets them take the responsibility, and he trusts them. That's probably your optimal situation, right? And so when the father passes, parents pass, they've had the experience with it. That wasn't the case here. So each dynamic is different, and then you get to a difference of opinions about, well, what are we going to do with the ranch, or what are we going to do with the farm, right? I'll speak to the alternative energy because I've seen such division in some of these families, right? It's like one doesn't want it, one wants it, and then they're wrestling over it, right? And then some of them, it's just the patriarch is just still there, and he's older than he's getting up there, and he's still running it, iron fist. But you can only do so much, and I notice I'm getting tired. Fortunately, like I said, this is my Walmart job. I'm a greeter, and so it's kind of an easy gig in that respect. And we've done a lot of the heavy lifting, even though there are things to do. But yeah, I think every single family is different. And if I was just going to say anything about that, what I would do from learning from my mistakes, keep your mouth shut, really try to understand the situation from the other family member's side. And if you don't have the power to change it, it's probably not going to do you any good to get all frustrated about it. And that's kind of what I did. It kind of frustrated me because I did not think this thing was being run on a good business level. But like I said, some of the people I've dealt with, some of the big family farms, they got it. The kids are all in on it. They're having their meetings, but it's still the final decision comes back to the father or the mother. I'd say just have grace for one another.
I love it. Listen and grace. Listen to the other side, really seek to understand, and then make sure that there's enough grace for the family to still exist with each other.
I think so.
I think that's awesome. That's super powerful.
Yeah.
So
totally missing in my world when I took this over.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful, because there's a lot of people that are going to be going through this transition here, especially over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think this is a conversation that I think a lot of people need to be having, either generationally, or owners that don't have kids, or don't have kids that are interested in being in the business for whatever reason. I think they're going to need to have a real conversation with themselves to figure out what does this look like? How do we steward this legacy business to make sense for future generations, because it's valuable. The business itself is its own entity, and it's valuable, and it's the things that we get to steward while we're here on this earth. So I think that's super helpful.
Yeah. So one of my investment partners is an estate planning attorney, and he did all of our estate planning. And he said you only have the next generation that you can somewhat try to direct, right? But once you're gone, whatever you set up, that's going to go that way, but you don't know what's going to happen to it after that. They'll do their own thing. And to me, that's totally okay. So I'm just kind of playing a waiting game. I'm waiting to see, like, hey, let me keep doing this. Like, does this make financial sense for everybody? It's, I said, maybe a cash cow, maybe an ugly cash cow, but it's still our cow. And so that's what I told my daughter. So I'm just waiting to let people percolate. And it might take a few years, and then let them, you've ever heard of the forming, storming, and norming? It's where a group comes together and they form. Then they storm, because everybody's either vying for power, what they want, their positioning, all that kind of stuff. And then they normalize it somehow. Yeah. So I'd say we're in the storming process. I'm not storming. I'm just watching. I'm going this way. We're going to go this way. And my daughter's got really good ideas, and I let her run with it. I don't like, well, now wait a minute, how much is this going to cost? What's that going to cost? I'll say, hey, what do you think the general idea of what this is going to cost? And then once we hit it, and she's really good about budgets and very conscientious about it and her time spent and all that. And I'm going, wow, this is very impressive. Can people look beyond this or see themselves running this in a different way? I mean, we had a landline. Now it rolls to a cell phone, so I can be out doing things.
Yep.
And that's why I always say, call me 20 minutes in advance, because I may be in town doing something. Give me a chance, let me run this thing. And I have a whole bunch of people. I don't want to be stuck in that office, that's for sure. I don't want to have point of sale. I'm going to just run this thing like a real estate company, and not because real estate investment, because that's what I do. And so made that determination right from the get-go.
I love it. So let's kind of we're going to start landing the plane a little bit here, and let's talk about your business and who are your best customers. Who do you love to help the most? And talk to us a little bit about your business model.
Okay, yeah, the business model. So the business model was defined early, and that was fortunate because my niece's husband was a project manager, professional project manager, and had all the tools. And the model was always to empower people that worked for us. So my business model is that we become a premier business. That's a good model for others to follow. We work with others. Like if I don't feel like you're getting what you want from me, and I can tell sometimes on the telephone, I'll say, hey, I've got other spaces or other places that you can go, and I'll give you those names that I think you'll be happier at. Because the last thing I want is somebody to come to my place, and one, it didn't meet their expectations. Two, they weren't satisfied with it, and they didn't have a particularly good time. And I don't want that. I'd rather find them something that they do want, and I want to find them something local, so the business stays local. That's what I want. I want a good reputation, and I like giving people personal service. I like to answer the phone. I like to help people park. I enjoy doing that, and it's just a good way for me to interact with people. So that's the business model. Be a premier RV park that if we don't have it for you, we'll help you find it.
And we could personally attest to this. Like, we've been staying here a couple of days now, and Johnny has been a fantastic host. The space here for us, we were really appreciated having a level concrete pad. It's a full hookup, and so we have 50 amp, we have full hookup, water, sewer, level pad. Like, it's right here next to walking distance to a beautiful little beach. It's been real nice to have this rest and relaxation here before we go on to our next leg of our journey. So I could say, yeah, like, your service has been top notch. The relationship and the personal touch to everything that you have done here. I think you've hit your mark exactly. You've shown us that this is a reflection of you, and we really appreciate being invited into your home and being taken care of like family.
Yeah, and that's really a good way to put it, because this was my home. This is where I grew up, and so I look at this very different. And I answer the phone. I answer the phone sometimes very late at night because I know somebody's out there needing some help, and I know I'm probably the only person that's going to answer that phone. So it's one thing to advertise and be with all these different social media places, or Google's our big one, but it's when they get here. And if they give me a chance to just show them some things, I think generally they'll enjoy it. Give me a chance. Let me just share with you something that might not be apparent when you roll in, but once you get here, you'll see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, how can people find you?
We're on Google.
Google.
Johnny'sAtTheBeach.com. We are on Compendium, RV Life, and we're mentioned in Yelp. Yeah, we have a little Facebook page I've taken to writing stories from growing up here and growing up on a fishing boat. My dad was a commercial fisherman, so I'd go out commercial fishing with him as a little guy, and I had some pretty dynamic adventures. And I'm writing about those, and you can find those at Johnny's at the Beach Facebook page. And that's all managed by my niece, Annie. So, and that's still developing. I know what that is yet, right? But I let people, again, I'm back to the philosophy. Just because I don't know doesn't mean I don't let it rock that thing. If that's what you think we need, and unless it just looks totally bizarre, even for me, I'm pretty open-minded about stuff. And somebody's bringing stuff and get them in here and and then come into the embrace of our family. Because what I find is when they walk in the door and they see all those old pictures, they just go, wow, how long have you been here? Yes, we've been with 77 years. And that's something. And then you start telling the story, and people like the story. That's what I found, like in the reviews. I see the reviews, and I'm very proud of the fact, and for the Humboldt Bay area, we are the top rated RV park. Are we fancy? Nope. But we're cool. We got location, and we're evolving. And I get thrown in with the price.
I love it. I'll link to all of his socials, to the website will be linked in the description below of this video. Please, 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 please check him out. If you are in the Eureka area, you're passing through, going from California to Oregon or Oregon to California, make this a stop in your destination. It'll be absolutely worth it. Johnny's at the beach.
Johnny's at the beach. It took you a little while, but you finally got it.
I got it. All right. With that, say thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.